I would like to just, I'm not a musician. Ngiyibhimbi ngesiZulu, I don't know how to sing, but I just have this thing that I have to share a little piece that will help you to understand who I am when I start to talk, that, to be part of my introduction. Ndodakazi yolahleko, ndodakazi yolahleko, yashiya abazali ngenxa yenqindezelo, yashiya abazali ngenxa yenqindezelo, yadla izimpande zezihlahla, yadla izimpande zezihlahla. Masihambeni siye kubo, sithi kubo, mama baba, sicela uxolo, sicela uxolo. Masihambeni siye kubo, sithi kubo, sizwe sakithi, sicela uxolo, sizwe sakithi, sicela uxolo, sicela uxolo. My name is Sibongile Mvubelo. Born in Soweto and brought up in Soweto. I am a mother, I am a grandmother. In the African way, I am a great-grandmother because my nieces and my nephews are my children. And all the other children, like these ones. So that makes me a great-grandmother. And I'm grateful to be that. And I trust that you will appreciate to be addressed on a youth day by a great-grandmother. I also happen to be a student of 1976. I was at Naledi High School, one of the high schools which were charged with organizing the junior primary schools and secondary schools around our areas to organize the students to be ready to, it was not really to confront the system, but to go and appeal, for them to listen to us. And so at my school, it started on the 8th of June, when a young student was arrested by the police. Inos Ngucheni was one of the brightest students who was with the student movement, Southern. And so he wrote a letter to the minister because the protest had started, since January that year. There were protests all over Soweto. And because the system had introduced, just all of a sudden, Afrikaans, which was the language of the then regime. So they introduced Afrikaans to now, to be the medium of instruction for every subject. Remember that we started everything in our own language until I think standard 2, or primary education. So we were learning subjects in our own language. And then, of course, at a later stage, we were also learning other languages like English and Afrikaans as languages, but our own language as well. Your home language was the first language, and then, of course, Afrikaans and English as additional languages. So then they decided that they are going to impose just Afrikaans to be the medium for every subject. So whether it's biology, mathematics, everything suddenly has to be done in Afrikaans. And you should know that the colonial master of this country was Britain. And so everybody learned English. As it is, English was a language that was easily, understandable because our grandfathers learned they were, some of them were actually teachers. And then, of course, you had priests and so on. So that was a bit simpler language. And then, of course, Afrikaans had been a language that had been developing right here in our presence. It was a language that came from Holland, from Holland, then Holland, now the Netherlands. And these are the colonizers that came through Jan van Riebeeck, and and what they did was they taught us, then they taught us their language. But the Afrikaners decided, because they were a mixture of the French Huguenots and then the Hollanders. So what they did, and then of course, they mixed also with the Malaysians and the San people who are Africans, the original inhabitants of Africa. So then through, the interaction with these people, then they developed their language, which then they called Afrikaans. So somebody will just think, how can you boycott Afrikaans when it is actually an African language? But you have to understand that it is a language. I don't think that it was already 100 years by the time they wanted to impose it upon us, because apartheid was already over 30 years in power. And so then they felt stronger to, so that they can be able to colonize us further, to teach us Afrikaans. And so, they also imposed it through, they started with imposing Bantu education when they took over from the British, because everybody was learning English. They themselves were learning English because that was the language of instruction for everybody. So I think that I do not know, how to explain it, but somehow I suspect that they must have felt that, okay, this education is putting us at the same par with them. And so, and the fact that some of our grandfathers were already teachers and so on, they thought that this will, put an African at the same level as them. And so they decided that we must have a special education which is only for us. a bit inferior, you know. So it started just after they came into power. They introduced this system. And so we were separated because somehow people were mixed together. Somehow, I mean, I suppose the difference was class difference at the time. But then this time, they just decided that even, you know, we can't belong to the same class. We had to be, you know, completely separate. So then we went to, I mean, then we everything was instructed. That was the system that was imposed earlier, just after apartheid took over. And this time around, they felt it was not enough. So then they had to have Afrikaans, you know, their language to be imposed upon everybody. So it may have been, you know, convenient for some people who had actually adapted the language as part of their own language. But for the majority of us, it was very, very difficult. So the students, it was going to start with the lower levels up to secondary school. And so those who were at high school level about to complete then were not affected. So the younger students protested right through the year in the junior secondary schools. And somehow the system was not responding. It was tough. So, and of course, I mean, some of the students, SASM tried to, you know, to intervene, to try and take it up, and that's how Enos ended up writing to the minister. And then, of course, I mean, on this particular day at Naledi High School, which was not directly affected as a high school, but those who were still, I mean, doing secondary education in the same school were definitely going to be affected. So then they came to arrest Enos, and the students knew that okay, now if they take Enos, it means that you know, something is seriously fishy, something seriously happening here. So they kept him in the class in the principal's office for hours on end. And when they started, you know, bringing a reinforcement of the police, just at that time, the student decided that now, because we were already, you know, restless, not, you know, attending to what the teacher was saying, because everybody was interested at what was happening. And of course, I mean, just at that time, some of the students decided that we have to take action, because if the principal allows you know, him to be arrested, then we must also act. And they banned the police car. The police called their headquarters, and they brought a big reinforcement just for the students. And they filled up the yard with dogs, and that was the first school where tear gas was, where they threw tear gas at students. So it really brought a whole lot of confusion, and we started running, you know, running away. But at the end, Enos was arrested, and so they started haunting us. A few other students were also arrested. But this is how Naledi High School also is also part of the heritage schools.